No need to panic, race fans. 2311 and Front Row Motorsports confirm they will race in 2025. Instant reaction to some breaking lawsuit news this Saturday morning. Don't mind me just putting on my lawyer costume here. Gonna pretend like I know what I'm talking about for the next 5 or 10 minutes.
How the hell? I thought I knew how to tie a tie.
Oh, heck yeah. Okay, that just looks stupid. In all seriousness, this morning, NASCAR decided to remove the "you can't sue us" clause from the open agreement. Jeffrey Kessler, representing 2311 and Front Row Motorsports, said in a statement, quote, "We are pleased to announce that NASCAR has removed the anti-competitive release requirement in its open agreement, which will now allow 2311 and Front Row Motorsports to race as open teams in 2025. My clients will continue their appeal to the Fourth Circuit to issue an injunction so that they can run as chartered teams, therefore avoiding irreparable harm. Both race teams are pleased that they will continue to be a participant in the sport that they love while fighting to make it fair and just for all." What are they talking about? Let me back up for a moment, get everyone up to speed. Obviously, if you want to race in NASCAR as a chartered team, you have to sign NASCAR's charter agreement. But it became known in recent weeks that even if you want to race without a charter, you still had to agree to certain NASCAR terms. And one of those terms stated that you cannot sue NASCAR on antitrust grounds. The teams are now celebrating that NASCAR has decided to remove that clause from the open agreement. This will now allow 2311 and Front Row to race next year as open teams without fearing that their entire lawsuit will get thrown out. Because before, think about it, if that clause was still in there and the teams were to agree to it to be allowed to race, their entire antitrust lawsuit may have been dismissed. So that's really all that's changed here. Denny Hamlin, of course, co-owner of 2311, cast some doubt last week on the team's future. He was asked if the 23 and 45 cars would race next year, and Hamlin had said, quote, "I think it's all TBD. There's certain things that we're going to have to navigate, so I hope so." That was really the first time in this entire process that someone from one of these teams suggested they might not be able to race next year. And in my opinion, Hamlin's words were carefully chosen. It was a clear response to the teams losing their injunction request a few days earlier. At the time, the judge said that the teams were not able to show proof of immediate irreparable harm, that all of their concerns were speculative. Oh, we could lose sponsors. Our drivers could sign elsewhere. Denny Hamlin's comments, I think, last week were meant to sway public opinion that, oh no, we could face immediate irreparable harm. We might not show up in February, when I don't think that was ever truly on the table. But needless to say, this decision today by NASCAR to remove that questionable clause from their open agreement now makes it easy for 2311 and Front Row to race in 2025. There's still a chance they could race as chartered teams next year, depending on how their injunction appeal ends up. But at the very least, they'll be able to race as open teams without having to sign away their rights to sue NASCAR. So that is a positive development for 2311 and Front Row Motorsports. I'm trying to figure out why NASCAR would do this. Why would NASCAR get rid of this clause? They won the initial injunction hearing, right? Like, pressure was put on the teams now to make a decision. Do we race next year and risk throwing out this entire lawsuit? Like, this seemed like positive momentum for NASCAR. I think what this means, and again, I'm going to put my fake lawyer outfit on here for a second. This is a joke. I think NASCAR knows that if Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace, Noah Gragson, and Todd Gilliland don't show up next year, it's bad for business. So they're willing to compromise on this one issue, I think, hoping that it will lead to the teams losing their appeal. Because the one thing I don't think NASCAR wants is to enter a charter agreement with 2311 and Front Row. Based on reports out of the courtroom, NASCAR has made it very clear. The teams have said very disparaging stuff about us publicly. We don't want to enter into a charter deal. That previous deal that we put on their desk months ago, yeah, that's been rescinded. We no longer want to sign that. So maybe NASCAR figures, hey, if we get rid of this clause, allow them to race as open teams, their argument in the appeals court will not be as strong. That's my theory. NASCAR does not want to enter into a charter agreement with these two teams as things currently stand, but they do want the 23, the 45 on track. So they're willing to make this compromise. I think they feel this strengthens their appeals argument. That's my theory. Again, fake lawyer over here. Can't even tie a freaking basic knot. Big picture, because I know that's all anyone really cares about. 2311 Racing and Front Row are going to race next year, likely with 2 entries apiece, Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick, Noah Gragson, Todd Gilliland. We still don't know what's become of those remaining Stewart-Haas charters. Stewart-Haas entered into an agreement to sell 1 charter to 2311 and 1 charter to Front Row. But since those teams didn't sign the charter agreement, now they're suing NASCAR. Those deals seem to be on pause. We'll wrap things up here. A few of y'all have tweeted at me this clip of Tony Stewart. It's like over a week old. I think he said it just before Phoenix. Haven't reacted to it on this show. Was too busy with championship week content and news, but we can kind of circle back to it now. Of course, Tony Stewart, co-owner of Stewart-Haas Racing, who just ran their final NASCAR races. He was on a show, Cars and Culture, with Jason Stein. I will link the full YouTube clip down in the description below. But in this interview, Tony Stewart spoke vaguely about the charter debate, broadly speaking. He was still kind of vague about why he chose now to leave the sport, but he did give one sort of Tony Stewart-esque blunt opinion on the newest charter agreement. Tony Stewart said, of the current agreement,
the charter agreements are a joke.
Short, sweet, to the point. He elaborated somewhat, saying, quote, if people aren't smart enough to read between the lines when Rick Hendrick says, I just got tired of arguing with them, Rick Hendrick has never done that a day in his life. So if people aren't smart enough to read between the lines and figure out what that means, then you're missing the whole big picture. I'm a purist. I'm an old school guy when it comes to racing. Tony Stewart signed the newest charter agreement, not because he necessarily loved the terms. He loved that he got to hold on to his charters. He knew he was getting out of the sport. He wanted to make sure he had those assets he could sell. So even though Tony Stewart and Gene Haas signed the newest deal, obviously that doesn't mean they agreed with all of the terms. And it's clear, he's pointing out recent Rick Hendrick quotes, it's clear that other owners didn't love the terms either. Richard Childress have suggested that he was coerced into signing a less than stellar deal. Rick Hendrick, Stewart mentioned there, said something kind of similar. The new charter agreement gives the teams a lot more money, a much larger slice of the media revenue pie, but based on what's been made public so far, it forces the teams to waive certain rights. There's questions over who owns team intellectual property. NASCAR still has the right to make potentially costly rule changes, car changes. NASCAR still owns the intellectual property of the next-gen car. There's still a lot in the agreement, supposedly, that is not team friendly, but the teams do get a lot more cash, so it's not all bad. It's understandable why more than a dozen teams did sign the new agreement, but Tony Stewart is pointing out that even folks who signed the deal aren't exactly thrilled with the terms. I encourage y'all to go hear the full interview. They don't talk about charters and business the whole time, but it is interesting. Tony Stewart always has, I think, strong opinions, though he is speaking still rather vaguely about the whole charter situation because it is still ongoing. I think that's my reaction to this clip from Tony Stewart. Even though he's pulling out of NASCAR, he's still linked to the charter agreement because until 2311 and Front Row sort their stuff out, Stewart can't sell those 2 charters that he was hoping to sell. That's 40, 50, 60 million dollars that are kind of just in limbo. That's a major transaction that hasn't officially gone through yet. Obviously, not all of that money would go straight to Tony Stewart, but he's waiting on a big payday, and all these hangups are slowing that down, keeping that from happening. So I think there are a lot of reasons why Tony Stewart sounds frustrated in this interview, in that clip. The current agreement isn't great. It's slowing down his transaction with 2311 and Front Row, stifling his business at the moment. But I think more than that, I mean, Stewart's been growing disinterested with NASCAR since before the current charter negotiations even began, at least if you ask me. So I think there are a multitude of factors, but a handful of y'all tweeted that clip at me. I figured I'd react to it even though I'm like a week late. It kind of ties into today's ruling in regards to 2311 and Front Row. That's all I've got. Instant reaction, Saturday morning edition. I told you, just because it's the off season doesn't mean there won't be things to talk about nearly every single day. Thanks for watching this video. Y'all leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think of Tony Stewart's comments, what you think of NASCAR's decision to waive that clause. We'll be back Monday, most likely, with more NASCAR off-season content. Thanks for watching, y'all. Talk to you again soon.